If formulas have you stumped, today's your lucky day. First, we're going to unlock a Google Sheets feature that's all drag and drop magic with no formulas needed, but that's not all. For your second treat, stick around to the end and I'll reveal how Google Sheets can give you advanced formulas from scratch right within the app itself. Sample workbook is down in the description. Grab it, open it, let's turn you into a Google Sheets genius. Now I have here a bunch of data that needs to be analyzed. I could create a table like I've done over here where I've got the customer IDs, a SumIfs function to show us the total revenue from each customer, and a CountIfs function to give us the number of orders for each customer. But every time I want to see something new, this takes time and energy to set something up. Instead, we're going to use PivotTables. Now, before we get started using a pivot table, we need to make sure that our data is clean. So for example, if we had a column here that was just randomly placed in the middle of our data, this is not great data. If we had a row inserted here, that's okay, we can filter that out. But for the columns, let's just go ahead and delete this column because it's not useful at all. Now we're going to click anywhere within our dataset and go up to Insert, Pivot Table. We'll go to a new sheet and we'll make sure that our data range is selected. Now this is a good data range, however, I'm just going to change a couple of things. First, where it says A1, I'm going to get rid of that 1. And second, where it says 702, I'm going to get rid of the 702. So it's just sheet 1, A to G. Click on Create, and now we have a new pivot table in a pivot table tab. Along with the pivot table, we can also see it opened up the pivot table editor in the sidebar, and we get two sidebars here. This one is how the pivot table is set up, and this one is our fields that we have in our dataset. We're going to use this sidebar over on the right hand to pull together our pivot table. Now, if you don't quite recognize these titles here, they come directly from our dataset: customer, order ID, product, units sold, date, revenue, and cost, exactly the same as what we see here. So these column headers that we have here are referred to in pivot tables as fields. Now, if we go back to sheet 1, we can see this table that I've set up earlier. It's got customer ID, followed by the revenue, and then the number of orders. Let's see if we can recreate this using our pivot table. So first, we can see that each row is dedicated to a different customer. So if we go to our pivot table, we'll take our customers and drag and drop to our rows. And there we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are our customers. Let's go back to sheet 1 and we can see the total revenue. Now this is what's called a calculated column. If we go to our pivot table, then a section in here is going to be the calculated values. So in this case, the revenue. And that's going to go into our values section. 1.19 million, 1.039 million, 948 million, and so on. That matches this exactly. Now it automatically gave us the sum of revenue that you can see in the title, and down here, the sum of revenue. Now while this is good, the formatting can be updated. So we can see currently they have the cents, so let's remove those cents by just double clicking the decreased decimal places. And that looks much better already. Let's now click back into sheet 1, and the last column is the number of orders. So let's go back to our pivot table, and there's a few ways that we can do this. The easiest way, in my opinion, is to grab our customer and bring that right below our revenue. So we have revenue and customer. At the moment, these numbers here don't match what we've got in sheet 1. 150, 147, 125, and so on. We do have 150, but now we have 294 and 375. What it's done is used the sum instead of the count. So let's just change that to count, and now we have an exact match of what we have here. So here I was able to build the exact same view of our data that we have over here. And I didn't have to use a single function or formula. Pivot tables can be complex, but to get started, it's not that hard. Now that we've got the pivot table in place, it's easy to analyze your data and to look at different views of your data. Let's say maybe I don't want to see the count of customers. All I need to do is scroll down to customer, click that X, and it's gone. Maybe I just want to see the total revenue. Maybe I don't want to see it broken down by customer. Well, just click that X and it's gone. We now have the total revenue. Now to pull the customers back in, we just click and drag to our rows. And there you can see it broken down by customer again. It's really easy to switch up your view depending on what you want to look at. Now, when we look at this pivot table, it's currently sorted by customer number. I actually want it sorted by revenue to see which customer is giving us the most money. So over here in our rows, we are sorting by customer. We can change this by clicking this button here and choosing sum of revenue. It's now going from lowest to highest. Well, let's change that the other way around to descending, highest to lowest, and we can see that customer 1 is giving us the most money, whereas customer 3 is giving us the least. Let's say that I want to sort by customer again. Just click on the sort by button, change it to customer, and let's go with ascending order. And now we've got our original view just as we had it before. Now we can see a little bit of a problem here. Up the top, we have a non-customer. It's just blank rows, and we get 0 revenue from that. Now I don't want to see that. And let's say I also don't want to see customers 3 and 5. So what we can do is scroll down here and we can see the filters down the bottom. Let's click on customer and drag it into our filters section. We don't want to show all items because we don't want to show those blanks. We also don't want to show customer 3 and 5. So once we've clicked those, we can click OK. And now we're just showing customers 1, 2, and 4. Let's click back on this drop-down box and select 3 and 5 again. We'll keep blanks unticked and click OK. And now we can see all 5 of our customers again. Now let's say I want to see the revenue of just Arabica beans. Let's scroll down, and in our filter section, we'll bring our product in and drag that right below our customer. We'll click on the drop-down box and we'll clear everything except Arabica coffee beans. Click OK, and now we can see only the revenue from Arabica coffee beans. To remove the filter, all we need to do is click that X, and we're back to our full revenue. Looking in this pivot table, we can see the amount of revenue that each customer generated, but I would like to also see the percent of the total revenue that the customer contributed. So over in our side column, we'll take our revenue and we're actually going to duplicate it. We'll grab this revenue here and pull it right below the other one. Now we have a duplicate, but let's change this to percent of grand total. Now we can see that customer 1 contributed 22.15%, whereas customer 3 contributed 17.6%. This data is really good, but these headers up here don't really make much sense. This is our revenue column, so all we need to do to change this title is just type it in, revenue. Same with our sum of revenue. Really, it's our percentage, so let's change this to percent of revenue. Along with seeing the revenue by customer, maybe we also want to see the revenue by product. So up here, in our rows, we can grab our product field and drag that below our customer. Now we can see each product for each customer. We can collapse the customers if we want to see just a particular one. Let's open that back up, and we can also change the order. So now we can see Arabica beans and the customer numbers. Now these customer numbers aren't the right format, so if we hold Control, Shift, and 1, that takes us back to a number format, and we'll get rid of those decimals. Over in our sidebar, we'll simplify things just by getting rid of the percent of revenue. So here, once again, we have our revenue split by each customer, split by each product. Now we can also take our product and move it to our columns. Now we can see each of the sales by customer and product. Here we have these not showing as dollars, so let's hold Control, Shift, and 4 to give us those dollars. Highlight everything and get rid of the decimals. It's really easy to manipulate the data that appears in the pivot table. First, let's open up these cells a bit so we can see these totals at the bottom. We'll get rid of the decimal places and just open it up just a tad. That's a bit too much. Let's wrap these titles around so that they're on 2 lines. We'll click on this 2 here, and then go up to this button, and then this middle wrap button. Now everything is wrapped, and it's easier to see these titles. I'm going to select everything, and hold Control, Shift, E to center everything, and that looks much better. We could also change the design of this by going Format, Theme. And we can see that we have a lot of themes available to click on. This one's very old school. This is what you would have seen back in Excel, 2009. Lots of different options. Maybe you want yellow, maybe you want red, maybe you want blue. I'm going to go with this second option here because I like those blue colors. We could also click Format, Alternating Colors, and that gives us our alternating colors. We can customize this however we want with a header, with a footer, and change the colors. We can add in some conditional formatting by going Format, Conditional Formatting, and let's say we want to see everything that is greater or equal to 250,000. Click OK and close that down. Now we can see all of the cells that are over 250,000 highlighted in green. If we don't want to show these grand totals, we can click this Edit button in the bottom left of our pivot table and then click Show Totals. That one, change this one over here, and we can get rid of this one at the bottom by unticking the Show Totals in the Customer field. Let's close that. Now we can also create a chart based on this data. We'll go up to Insert, Chart, and without selecting anything, it automatically gives us the Arabica coffee beans versus the customer. 385, 385. Let's bring back the grand totals for the columns. Close the pivot table editor and double click on the chart to bring up the chart options. Now the series we might want is the grand total for each of the customers. So let's click on Add Series, click on this window, and we'll select this range here for the grand total. Click OK, and there we have the grand total of sales for each customer alongside the Arabica coffee beans. Let's get rid of the Arabica coffee beans by clicking these three dots and clicking on Remove, giving us just the grand totals. Now we've got our pivot table again. If we want to share this amongst our teammates and we know that their pivot table skills aren't up to scratch, we can go up to Data and then Add Slicer. This brings up this slicer here and this sidebar. Let's change Choose a Column to Product. We'll leave this ticked and then close that sidebar. Now, when your teammate sees this, they can change the product by clicking All, and then they can select just the ones they want. Let's clear all of them and choose just hot chocolate mix and Robusta coffee beans. Click OK, and there we have our pivot table updated automatically. I'm going to click Format, Alternating Colors, and remove the alternating colors, giving us just our themed pivot table, and we'll remove our conditional formatting as well. If we want to see all of our products again, click the drop-down box, select all, and then click OK. Let's simplify our pivot table by clicking Edit, and then removing our columns, so we see just the column and the revenue. Again, we'll make sure that this is formatted correctly, holding Control, Shift, and 4 to give us dollars, and we'll get rid of those cents. Now that we're back to our basic pivot table, let's see if we can create that chart again. We'll select our data, click on Insert, Chart, and just like that, we get the revenue for our customers. Let's shrink it down and use the slicer that we just created to filter our data. We'll click All, and we'll just choose the ones that we want. Click OK, and there we have our chart that matches our pivot table. This analysis is great, but I want to see another pivot table, another set of data, without destroying this information. So we can just hit Control C once we've highlighted it, head down a little bit, and Control V to paste it in. Now we have a second pivot table that we can adjust separate from this first one. We'll go down to this Edit button. Now we already have the revenue, but let's add in here the cost. So let's scroll down, and in our Values section, we'll take our cost and drag it in. Let's get rid of the chart so we can see our cost. But what I can't see here is our margin. How much profit did we make? If we look along here, we can see we don't have a profit margin section. So we need to add what's called a calculated field. It's going to be in our values section down here. It's going to be a calculated field. So we'll click Add and then Calculated Field. What's the formula going to be? Well, to get a profit margin, it's going to be the revenue minus the cost. Revenue minus cost. Press Enter, and there is our calculated field. With this created, we no longer need to see our revenue and costs, so we can just close those down by clicking the X's. And here we can now see the profit by customer. Now the good thing about pivot tables in Google Sheets is when we set up our pivot table correctly, like this, then we can add new data and everything automatically updates. Let's go to the bottom of our list and add in a 6th customer. To make it easy, I'm just going to highlight these and Control D to duplicate the information from above. And let's go back to our pivot tables. We can see sheet 1 A to G is still selected. And if we go down to our customer at the bottom, our customer filter, we can click the drop down box and we can see our 6th customer is there. Now it's not showing our customer in here because we've got this slicer here. Let's click the drop down and select all, go down to OK, and we can see our 6th customer is right there. As for this one up here, we still have our customer filter, so let's click on our 6th customer. There we go, all sorted. Now let's delete the slicer, we'll delete the customer filter, and now we can see everything. So if we go back to sheet 1, we put in a 7th customer, and again, we'll just duplicate everything with Control D. We can now see customer 7 automatically gets added without us doing anything. One of the beautiful things about pivot tables is it doesn't affect our original source data. So we could delete all of this, and back in our sheet 1, everything is exactly as we left it. Throughout this entire video, we've been learning how to create pivot tables from scratch, but there's actually a way that Google Sheets can do it for us. With one of the cells inside our table selected, let's go up to Tools and then Explore. We get the Explore side tab come up, and down here you can see a pivot table. It asks you, do you want the average revenue for each product? If you do, you can click that and drag it into place. And it's right there. But there are other options. We can click this More button, and it gives us a multitude of options. Now if we go back, we also have the option to analyze the data. We could format it, we could create some analyses, which in this case look pretty terrible. But we can click on More to see if there's anything that might be helpful in here. Honestly, these aren't great because they're all using dates and this dummy data is not sorted by date. Let's just quickly do that by going Data, Sort Sheet, Column E, Z to A. Now it's all sorted from the most recent to the oldest. And our graphs look much nicer. Let's go the other way, oldest to newest. That updates the analysis, and this graph here gives us an idea of the revenue versus costs. We'll delete that and go back to our Explore section. The Explore function also offers us some questions, so we could ask any of these questions here. But we could also ask, how many products do we have? Press Enter, and it gives us 703 products. Now I actually meant how many unique products do we have? And it gives us 6. Now if you would like, you can see the formula there, and it tells us an advanced formula that we can drag and drop directly into our spreadsheet. There it is, with our formula already created. We could ask it to compare the costs for Arabica coffee beans versus dark chocolate. Immediately, it gives us a quick rundown, and we can even see the formula. Now that's an advanced formula. We could scroll across and drag and drop that in place, giving us exactly what we need, and if we click here, we can see the formula. If you're not great with formulas, get Google Sheets to do it for you. You can ask it directly, and it'll give you something in return that you can learn from. Now, if you're still struggling with formulas and pivot tables, feel free to check out this video here where I give you a rundown on how to use Google Sheets. If you still want to learn more, make sure you sign up to formulas24.xyz, enroll, and I'll see you there.